Jehu was a commander in the army of Israel, son of Jehoshaphat. He was known for one thing above all else. When Jehu drove a chariot, he drove it fast and hard, without slowing down for anyone. At this time, Israel was ruled by the family of Ahab, a family that had led the nation far away from God. For years, the wife of King Ahab, Jezebel, had spread the worship of Baal across the land, and had even hunted the prophets of the Lord who stood against her. Because of their evil, God sent the prophet Elijah with a warning. One day, Ahab's family would lose their power, and Jezebel's actions would not go unpunished. Years passed, but the judgment had not happened yet. During all of this, Jehu was simply a commander in Israel's army. He followed orders, fought battles, and served the kingdom without knowing that he would be the man chosen to carry out God's judgment. War broke out between Israel and a rival kingdom to the east. Joram rode out with his army and fought hard, but he was wounded in the fighting, an injury bad enough that he could not stay on the field. He handed command to his officers and returned home to recover, leaving the army camped far from the capital until he was well enough to lead again. Jehu remained one of the officers left with the army, a respected commander among warriors, still serving the kingdom he had always defended. He held the line, waiting for the king to return. The camp settled into the routine of waiting. Soldiers sharpened weapons, tended horses, and talked about the wound their king had taken. No one in that camp had any idea that their waiting was about to be interrupted by something far bigger than the war they were fighting. A prophet who served the Lord sent one of the young men who trained under him on an urgent errand. He gave him a flask of oil and told him precisely what to do. Go to the army's camp. Ask for Jehu. Take him alone, away from every other officer, into a private room where no one else could see or hear. Pour the oil over his head. Speak a message, then leave at once without waiting to explain anything further, without staying to answer a single question. The young man traveled to the camp and found the officers gathered together, resting between duties. He asked which of them was Jehu. Jehu stood and asked what business the stranger had with him. A message, Commander, for you alone. Jehu led him away from the others into a small room set apart from the noise of the camp, expecting nothing more than some ordinary report. Instead, the young man lifted the flask and poured the oil over his head before Jehu could say another word. Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, I anoint you king over Israel. You will strike down the house of your master. Every male of that house will be cut off, root and branch, until nothing of it remains. And the woman who has filled this land with false worship and the blood of the Lord's own prophets will die in the fields of Jezreel, and no one will bury her. Jehu opened his mouth, but there was no time. The young man was already through the door, already running from the camp as fast as his legs would carry him, exactly as he had been told to do. Jehu stood alone in the small room for a long moment, the oil still wet on his forehead, turning the words over in his mind. Then he walked back out to rejoin the other officers. They asked him why the man had ran out of the room. Word for word, he repeated the message. He had been anointed. He was now king over Israel, and he had been commanded to tear down the ruling family from its foundation. For a moment, none of them moved. Then one officer pulled the cloak from his own back and threw it down on the bare stone steps at Jehu's feet, a gesture of loyalty offered without hesitation. Another officer raised a trumpet to his lips and blew a long, sharp note that carried across the whole camp. Jehu was king. There was no ceremony, no crown, no palace waiting to receive him. There was only a camp full of soldiers shouting his name under an open sky, and a decision that had to be made in that same instant. because word of what had just happened could travel just as fast as he could. Jehu turned to the men closest to him and gave his first order as king. No one was to leave this camp, no rider, no messenger, no one at all was to slip away and carry word ahead of him to warn the palace. If Ahab's family discovered Jehu's plan before he arrived, they would have time to escape, prepare their soldiers, and protect themselves. Jehu knew he could not give them that chance. He had to move quickly before anyone knew what was coming. He climbed into his chariot, gathered his officers around him, and gave the command to ride. He drove the way he always drove, hard and fast, faster than a normal messenger would dare, faster than anyone expected a company that size to move. Far ahead, in the city where the king had gone to recover from his wound, a man stood watch on top of a tower, as he did every day, scanning the road that led into the city. That afternoon, he saw something unusual, a rising cloud of dust, far in the distance, moving quickly, far too quickly for an ordinary caravan or a lone traveler. He called down to report a company approaching. King Joram was recovering in the palace when he saw Jehu and his men coming toward the city. He did not know why Jehu was coming, so he sent a messenger on a horse to meet him. The messenger had one question. Was Jehu coming in peace, or was something wrong? Jehu did not answer the messenger's question. Instead, he told the man to turn around and follow him. He did this so the messenger could not return to the palace and warn King Joram about what was coming. From the tower, the watchman reported what he saw. The messenger had reached the company, but he was not returning. A second rider was sent out with the same question, and the same thing happened. He reached them and simply disappeared into the moving column, never turning back toward the city. The watchman studied the company a while longer, and then he called down something that changed everything. He recognized the driving itself, the reckless, relentless pace of it. This was no ordinary rider. This was the way Jehu drove a chariot, and he was driving now like a man who could not be stopped.
These videos takes hours and hours to make. If you could, please like and subscribe, and comment which country you are watching this from.
Even after the messengers did not return, King Joram still did not understand the danger coming toward him. He ordered his chariot to be prepared and went out himself to meet Jehu. Ahaziah, the king of Judah, who was visiting him at the time, went with him. The two kings rode out expecting a conversation, not realizing that Jehu had come to bring an end to Ahab's family. They met Jehu's company in an open field, land that had a long and bitter history attached to it. The king Joram called out to Jehu across the distance, asking once more if this was peace. Jehu's answer came without hesitation.
There can be no peace in the house of Ahab. There can be no peace with Ahab's family. Jezebel's influence must be destroyed.
At that moment, King Joram realized what was happening. He quickly turned his chariot around and warned King Ahaziah, who was beside him. But it was already too late. Jehu grabbed his bow, aimed at the fleeing king, and released the arrow. It struck Joram between his shoulders, went through his heart, and he fell inside his chariot. Jehu turned to the officer riding beside him and gave an order. "Take the body," he said, "and throw it onto this same ground, because years ago, on this very spot, a judgment had been spoken against this house for the blood of an innocent man, and that judgment was now at last being carried out to the letter." The visiting king from Judah saw what had happened and turned his own chariot to flee. Jehu gave the order to chase him down as well, and his men struck him on the road as he tried to escape. Badly wounded, he managed to travel some distance further before he finally died, and his own servants carried his body home for burial. Two rulers were dead within moments, and Jehu had not yet even passed through the gates of the city he was riding toward. He turned his chariot forward again, toward the palace itself, where the most dangerous figure, Jezebel, connected to that entire ruling family, was waiting for him, whether she knew it yet or not. She did know. Word had already reached her that her son was dead, and word had already reached her about who was coming next. She did not run. She did not bar the doors or call for extra guards. Instead, she went to her chamber, carefully painted her eyes, arranged her hair, and returned to a window that looked out over the main gate, choosing to meet her enemy with her head held high rather than hide from him like someone with something to fear. When Jehu's chariot rolled through the gate below, she leaned out and called down to him. Jehu did not look up at her and answer directly. Instead, he called out a question of his own, aimed not at her, but at anyone standing near her.
Who is on my side?
A pause followed. Then 2 or 3 servants leaned out from the window beside her, having made their choice. Jehu gave a single command. "Throw her down!" They did exactly that. Her body struck the stones below and the ground beyond them, and in the chaos that followed, the horses trampled over where she had fallen, leaving little behind that still resembled a queen. Jehu walked into the palace afterward and sat down to eat and drink, entirely unbothered by what had just happened outside those walls, as though he had simply finished a piece of ordinary business. Later, once his meal was finished, he gave instructions for her body to be gathered and buried properly, reasoning aloud that whatever she had done, she had still been born into a royal family and deserved that much respect. But when the men went out to carry out that order, they found almost nothing left to bury. Wild dogs had already come and gone, leaving behind only a skull 2 feet and the palms of 2 hands, scattered across the ground exactly where she had fallen, fulfilling a warning that had been spoken about her fate long before Jehu was ever anointed. Even after this, Jehu's mission was not finished. Many members of Ahab's family were still alive in the capital, and any one of them could one day gather supporters and try to take back the throne from Jehu. Jehu sent letters to the leaders of the city to test their loyalty. He told them that they had soldiers, chariots, weapons, and a protected city. If they still wanted to defend Ahab's family, they should choose one of his sons, make him king, and prepare to fight Jehu. When the leaders of the city read Jehu's letter, they became afraid. They knew Jehu had already defeated 2 kings, and they believed they had no chance of stopping him. Instead of fighting, they sent a message back saying they would obey him. They would not choose another king from Ahab's family, and they would do whatever Jehu commanded. Then Jehu sent them a second letter. He told them that if they were truly on his side, they had to prove it by removing the remaining sons of Ahab's family. The leaders obeyed Jehu's command. The royal sons were killed, and their heads were brought to Jehu in baskets. When Jehu heard they had arrived, he ordered them to be placed at the entrance of the city gate until morning, showing everyone that Ahab's dynasty had come to an end. When morning came, Jehu stood before the gathered crowd and spoke plainly. He admitted openly that he himself had killed King Joram. But Jehu reminded the people that he was not the one who killed those sons. The leaders of their own city had made that choice and carried out the command. Then Jehu told them that everything God had spoken years earlier about the destruction of Ahab's family was now being fulfilled. After this, Jehu continued removing everyone who was still connected to Ahab's family. He went after the officials, close supporters, and those who had helped keep their power until Ahab's house in Israel was completely removed. After this, Jehu traveled toward the capital city to finish his mission. On the way, he met a group of people who were related to King Ahaziah of Judah, the king who had escaped from him earlier. They were traveling to visit Ahab's family, not knowing that they had already been killed. Jehu ordered his men to capture them. After discovering who they were and their connection to the royal family, Jehu had all of them killed near a pit by the road. Further along that same road, Jehu crossed paths with a man known across the region for his strict and uncompromising devotion to the Lord, a man who had refused to bend to the corruption that had spread through the land for years. Jehu asked him directly whether his heart was true, the same way Jehu's own heart was true in this cause. The man answered that it was, and Jehu reached down and pulled him up into the chariot to ride beside him. Together the two of them rode into the capital, and there Jehu finished what he had begun, striking down every person still connected to the fallen royal family until none of that bloodline remained in the city. One thing still remained. The worship of Baal that Ahab's family had brought into Israel was still there. A large temple had been built for Baal, filled with his priests and followers. But Jehu did not attack the temple immediately with his army. Instead, he created a plan to gather all the worshippers of Baal together in one place before destroying it. He announced publicly that the previous rulers had only served this false god in a small way, but that he himself intended to serve him far more completely. He called for every priest, every prophet, and every worshipper connected to that religion to gather for a massive sacrifice, warning that anyone who failed to appear would not survive the day. The response was overwhelming. Worshippers streamed in from every corner of the land until the temple was completely packed, wall to wall, with not one absence anywhere. Jehu ordered special ceremonial robes brought out and distributed, ensuring that every worshipper inside could be instantly identified and separated from anyone who might not truly belong to that religion. He walked through the crowded temple himself, warning them to search carefully and make certain no outsider, no follower of the Lord had slipped in among them by accident. Only true believers were to remain. Outside, unseen by anyone inside those walls, Jehu had already stationed a large company of armed men with a chilling instruction. If even one worshipper managed to escape from that building alive, the man responsible for letting him go would pay for it with his own life. The sacrifice proceeded exactly as any other ceremony might, until the moment it was finished. Then Jehu gave the signal. His soldiers moved into the temple with their swords drawn, and not a single worshipper walked back out. The bodies were dragged outside. The sacred stone pillar at the center of the temple was hauled out and burned, and the entire building was torn down to its foundation and turned into a dumping ground, a permanent insult to everything it had once represented. In this way, that false religion was wiped from the land entirely, its temple gone, its priesthood gone, its worshippers gone. Yet even after everything Jehu had done, his story did not end as a perfect example of obedience. He destroyed the worship of Baal and removed the house of Ahab, but he did not completely turn Israel back to the Lord. The golden calves that King Jeroboam had placed in Bethel and Dan years earlier were still left standing, and Jehu allowed that false worship to continue. Jehu had obeyed God's command against Ahab's family, but Scripture says he was not careful to follow the law of the Lord with all his heart. Still, what he had done was acknowledged. A message came to him declaring that because he had carried out everything asked of him against that fallen royal house, his own descendants would hold the throne for 4 generations to come, a promise granted to no other family that had ruled that kingdom before him. Jehu ruled for 28 years from that same capital city. When his life finally ended, he was buried among his ancestors, and his son took the throne after him. The first of the 4 generations that had been promised to his family that day, the oil was poured over his head in a small private room, far from any palace, far from any crown.
Do you want to learn how to make these videos? Go to my YouTube page and watch the member-only video. I provide all the prompts I use, tools I use, and how I animate. These videos takes hours and hours to make. If you could, please like and subscribe and comment which country you are watching this from.